Imagine this. You're staring at someone across the room. Your heart is calm, but your blood burns. You don't know them, haven't spoken a single word, but something primitive takes hold. Not affection, not admiration, just a magnetic hunger that grips your body before your mind can even catch up. A craving with no moral compass, no logic, no destination, just fire. Now imagine this. The very next day, you feel hollow, not from guilt, but from something deeper, a feeling that you've been used, not by them but by yourself, as though you became a stranger for a moment, as though the fire that consumed you was never yours to begin with. What is this force that can enslave kings and humble saints, that can transform love into compulsion and connection into conquest? Why does lust, so often worshipped and feared, have the power to dismantle everything rational within us? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But what if lust is the unconscious? What if it's not just a desire, but a message from the depths, a shadow dragging us toward something we're too afraid to name? Where does this energy truly come from, and what if its meaning lies not in what we do with it, but in what it reveals about who we are? Keep looking at that fire. Don't look away. Because to understand lust, you must be willing to step into the flame and not flinch. Lust is rarely what it seems. It masquerades as desire, but beneath the surface it's something far older, far darker, an archetype embedded deep in the psyche. Carl Jung didn't view lust as merely a sexual impulse. He saw it as part of the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves we deny, repress, or ignore. And because it's repressed, it doesn't weaken. It festers, it waits. And when it emerges, it doesn't ask for permission, it possesses. You think lust begins with a body, a curve, a glance. But Jung would challenge you. What if it begins in the soul's exile? What if lust is not the hunger for another, but the hunger for yourself, projected onto another body? Civilization has always tried to tame lust through religion, law, shame. But repression doesn't dissolve desire. It fragments it. It pushes it underground where it grows teeth. Friedrich Nietzsche warned of this in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, that suppressed instincts return, not as enlightened virtues, but as twisted perversions. The more we deny the animal within, the more violently it demands to be seen. Jung observed that we are haunted by opposites. We crave union, yet sabotage intimacy. We long for purity, yet chase the profane. And at the center of this storm is the archetype of the Anima, or Animus, the inner feminine or masculine image deeply buried in our unconscious. Lust often isn't for the person in front of us. It's for the lost piece of ourselves they seem to carry. And so lust becomes a projection, a mirror. We mistake obsession for connection, possession for love. We see in others what we've disowned in ourselves. But these illusions crack easily. After indulgence comes emptiness. After conquest, confusion. We ask, why did I want this so badly? And deeper still, who was I in that moment? Arthur Schopenhauer, long before Jung, described the sexual impulse as nature's cruel joke. He believed that lust is the will, the blind, irrational force of life itself, tricking us into procreation, enslaving us through pleasure to serve a goal not our own. We are puppets, he argued, and desire is the string. But Jung was less fatalistic. He believed that if we could face the shadow, see lust not as shameful or divine, but as a symbolic force, we could reclaim our wholeness, not by indulging or denying it, but by understanding it. The real danger isn't lust itself. It's mistaking the symbol for the truth, chasing the form and missing the message. But what is the message? What is the soul really asking for when the body burns? You walk away from the encounter. Satisfied, maybe. Numb, more likely. But something lingers. Not the warmth of connection, but a kind of psychic echo, a whisper in the back of your mind, asking, was that it? Lust leaves fingerprints on the soul, not because it's inherently sinful, but because it's often mistaken for something it's not. You believe you've touched another person, but in truth, you've only touched the edges of your own shadow. This is where Jung's warning strikes hardest. When unconscious forces rule us, they manifest not as fate, but as patterns. You repeat the same stories, the same attractions, the same regrets. Lust becomes a loop, a compulsive reenactment of unresolved longing. And society feeds this loop. Modern culture commodifies desire. Algorithms sell bodies by the scroll. Entire industries profit from your unconscious projections, weaponizing your unmet needs. You're taught to chase the image, not the essence. To consume beauty, not to understand it. Lust is stripped of myth, of meaning, of mystery, and turned into a distraction. Neurologically, we are wired to reinforce this trap. Dopamine floods your system when desire is pursued, not fulfilled. Anticipation is more addictive than climax. Your brain isn't seeking intimacy, it's seeking stimulation, novelty, escape. You aren't in love, you're in a biochemical feedback loop masquerading as romance. And beneath it all lies something even more unsettling. The fear of true intimacy. Because real connection isn't erotic, it's exposing. It threatens the ego. It asks you to be seen, not just desired. Lust, by contrast, is safe. It's fire without light. It promises ecstasy without vulnerability. But what if that very safety is what keeps you from evolving? Jung would argue that lust, unexamined, is not just a personal failure, it's a collective tragedy. An entire society sleepwalking through its instincts, projecting inner hunger onto outer bodies, mistaking biology for destiny. And as this continues, something begins to fracture, not just in relationships, but in identity. You become a stranger to yourself. You no longer know what you want because you've never truly asked. You've only reacted, chased, taken. But now, in the stillness that follows the fever, comes a moment of reckoning, a glimpse of something deeper, something terrifying and liberating. What if lust is not a curse, but a compass? What if every obsession, every ache, every forbidden glance is not a trap, but a trail? Where does it lead? And what happens if you follow, not with hunger, but with awareness? You've been chasing shadows. You know that now. You've seen how lust disguises itself, how it pulls you in only to leave you emptier, thirstier, further from yourself. But what if the way out isn't through suppression, and it isn't through indulgence either? What if the only way forward is confrontation? Carl Jung's rebellion wasn't against lust itself, but against the unconscious slavery it fosters when ignored. To break free, you must bring it into the light. You must turn and face the fire, not to be consumed by it, but to understand what it illuminates. It begins with this radical act. Don't act on it, not immediately, not blindly. Instead, observe it. When desire arises, sit with it. Ask, what am I really wanting? Is it touch or to be held? Is it sex or to feel alive? Is it domination or the illusion of control in a world that terrifies you? This is the first rebellion, slowing down the instinct, making the unconscious conscious. Jung called this active imagination, letting the impulse speak, but not letting it steer, giving the shadow form and voice, not to obey it, but to understand it. You start to see that lust is never about the other person. It's always about you. Your wounds, your longings, your exiled parts, crying for reintegration. The person you desire is often just a symbol, a projection of the Anima or Animus, your inner opposite, appearing in the outer world to provoke your growth. And once you recognize the pattern, you're no longer its prisoner. Now, lust becomes a teacher. You study it. You track when it emerges, what it's tied to, what stories it tells. You learn to decode its myths. The feeling of lust becomes a psychological GPS, pointing to areas within you that are starved of attention, creativity, vitality. Aldous Huxley once said, "Experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you." This is the core of Jungian rebellion, not abstinence or hedonism, but alchemy, turning the raw lead of desire into gold. Real rebellion is reclaiming authorship, choosing not to chase the image but to integrate the essence, not to extinguish the fire, but to become its master. And slowly, you begin to experience a new kind of freedom, one where desire is no longer a tyrant, but a signal, a summons, a sacred echo of what you've yet to become. So now, you stand in the center of the flame, eyes open, not running, not consumed, and finally you ask, if lust is the shadow, what is it pointing toward in the light? You faced the flame, you didn't run from it. You listened to it. And now in the silence that follows, something begins to shift, not in your body, but in your being. Here is the final truth. The one that doesn't scream, it whispers. Lust was never about the other. It was the soul's cry to return to wholeness. Jung believed that every longing, every obsession, every erotic fixation was symbolic, a mirror showing you what you lack within. Not a condemnation, but a call. Not sin, but signal. Lust, then, is not the fire to flee, nor the flesh to devour. It is the veil, and behind it waits the self. The deeper work is not to fix your desire, but to redeem it, to gather the scattered pieces of your psyche and make them whole again. Integration, individuation. To become who you truly are, not by erasing desire, but by learning its language, its myths, its origin. You realize now, lust is powerful because it disguises the most sacred truth. It points toward union. But not just with a body, with the lost pieces of your own soul. The person you crave. They are an image of your anima or animus. They hold your forgotten creativity, your silenced voice, your unlived life. And so, the ultimate act of liberation is not possession, but transformation. To see beauty, and instead of devouring it, honor it. To feel desire, and instead of surrendering to it, translate it. What does it want you to know? What forgotten part of you is trying to return through this magnetic force? This is the paradox Jung knew. When you chase the object of lust, you miss the subject, yourself. But when you turn inward and face the unconscious, lust becomes not an enemy, but a guide, a mythic compass pointing toward the buried treasure of your inner world. And then finally, you understand. The fire was never outside of you. It was you, all along, split into pieces, begging to be whole again. So you no longer fear lust. You no longer need to numb it, nor obey it. You've made peace with it. And more than that, you've listened. You walk differently now, quieter, but deeper. You don't look for fire in others. You carry your own. And in that, you've discovered the most powerful truth of all. The desire you thought was for another was always the longing to return to yourself. And that, Carl Jung would say, is the beginning of true love.